When I tell people that I am an SEO consultant, one of the most common responses that I get is people saying, "Oh, SEO, I have that on my website. It's the thing with the green lights, right?" And that's when I know that those people have the Yoast SEO plugin installed on their site. However, I always get a little bit concerned when that's the response, because just getting green lights on your website or installing a plugin to your website isn't necessarily all that you need to do in order to see results. It's like saying, "Oh, Facebook, I have a Facebook business page." But having a Facebook page is not enough. It's not about setting up the page. It's about the information that you put on it. And the value of the information that you put into the system will determine your results. So in this video today, I'm going to talk you through how you can make the best use of the Yoast SEO plugin on your WordPress website, and how to make sure that you don't get lulled into a false sense of security that you're doing everything you can when you haven't taken all the steps. So stick with me. I'll be back with you right after this. If you have a WordPress website, there's a chance that you've heard of the Yoast SEO plugin. After all, it's been downloaded over 200 million times, and it's active on over 1 million different websites right now as you're watching this. The Yoast SEO plugin is sort of the default in the SEO space of you go to the plugin menu and that's the one that you choose. And it can be a really great tool. It can help remind you of specific things that you need to do on every page of your website. It will give you little prompts to say, "Hey, let's make sure that your keyword is in your SEO title." And, "Oh, you forgot to include a link here." And, "Hey, you don't have any alt text here, so make sure to include an image with alt text." It's a really great little prompting reminder service, but the Yoast plugin is not a strategy. It is a tool. And there's a difference between a tool that can follow a certain set of protocols and be a checklist for you to double check your work, and a strategy that will help you get better results. So let me tell you a story to explain what I mean. When I first started as a web designer, I wrote this blog post called "Which is Better, WordPress or Squarespace?" And I had this metaphor working all the way through the blog post about how WordPress is sort of like Legos, where it has all of these different pieces and there are blueprints you can follow, but really you can build anything with it. Whereas Squarespace is more like a coloring book. You have the template, but you can decide how it looks at the end of the day. You can make adjustments to the themes that they have, to the way that things are laid out to make it still feel like you, but you can't really color too much outside the lines. And I wanted to make this example so that way people who were not that tech savvy would understand the difference of how versatile WordPress can be. But if you don't want the versatility, there is another great option. Squarespace can be versatile, don't get me wrong, but compared to WordPress, it doesn't have nearly as much customizable functionality. After I'd written the blog post, I turned on my Yoast because I know that I should always go into Yoast as I'm getting ready to publish something, and I wanted to make sure that I was doing okay for SEO. And it said, "What's your target keyword?" And I said, "Legos." Because I thought WordPress is like Legos, and that's a great keyword. And I optimized the entire site for the word Legos. I optimized that whole page, and I put the word, WordPress is like Legos in the SEO title, in the headlines, in the images. I made sure that the word Legos was everywhere, and it was like, awesome job, green light, you got this. And it made me feel great about the work that I was doing. But that blog post was not about Legos. It was about WordPress and Squarespace. And I was given this false sense of security that I had done everything right for SEO by saying, "Yeah, Legos." It was even like, "You don't have anything on your website about Legos. This is a great post." Yeah, I don't have anything about Legos because it wasn't about Legos. And I've heard stories from other SEO consultants that are very similar, where they go in to audit a new client's website and the previous SEO consultant says, "Look, your site is optimized. Look at all of these beautiful green lights." But the things that they're optimized for don't make any sense. Like a bed and breakfast where every page was optimized for the room number. Nobody's searching for room number 1. They're looking for Seaside Inn. They're not looking for the specific room number. So before you start stressing out about getting green lights onto all of your pages, there are a few disclaimers I want to put in place. Number 1, Not every page on your website needs to be optimized for search. If you have a landing page where you're driving traffic from social media or from a guest blog post, and you just want a very short page where you can collect email addresses, you don't need that to show up in Google search results. So don't feel like you need to get that to a green light in order to have your website pass some magical test. Doesn't matter at all whether every page on your website is green or if they're all red. Does not matter at all. Second, once you've identified which pages on your site you do want to have show up in search results, before you think about the Yoast plugin, it's time to go do some keyword research. You can check out my introduction to keyword research video, but the basic idea here is that you want to make sure that every page has 1 to 5 different phrases that you want to rank for. It does not have to be one specific phrase that you repeat over and over and over and over again. You can choose 3 or 4 different phrases that all mean the same thing and optimize the page for variations on that. So make sure that every page that you have on your website has some sort of keyword in mind. If you're not sure what that is, think to yourself, if I were looking for this page, what would I go search for? Third, remember that every page on your website does not need to get a green light, even if it's being optimized for search. You have my full permission to write something that people want to read, more importantly, than you want to sneak keywords into specific places. So if you can get yourself to the orange or amber color on specific things, but you feel like you're getting a little bit stuck about how to get that one phrase into 5 different places on that blog post, I give you permission to let go of the perfectionism and to write something that people want to read and that you think people will be interested in, which is more important to your content than just getting those green lights. And one more thing. Yoast does not communicate with Google directly. I think there are some people who think you have to have that focus keyword in there and then Yoast reports the focused keyword to Google. It does not. Yoast is a checklist. It makes sure that your keyword is in specific places, but you can rank very well for a page that has no Yoast information in it at all. So don't feel like you have to follow all of their rules. Otherwise, Yoast won't tell Google what's happening. Yoast is just making minor tweaks to things like your SEO title and encouraging you to make adjustments to your text. But if you turn off Yoast, you can still absolutely rank for things. So with all of that in mind, let's take a look at Yoast. Let me show you how to use this super powerful tool. So here we are behind the scenes of my website. So I'm giving you guys kind of the sneak peek of how this all works. And the first thing that you need to do if you're getting started with the Yoast SEO plugin is you can come on over and install the plugin. Come to add new, and then you'll notice I typed in SEO and the first one that shows up is the Yoast SEO plugin. So you can click here to install it, activate it, and as soon as it's activated, you'll see a little piece show up here in the sidebar that says SEO. And you can come over here and check out your general settings. I like to start this process by coming down to search appearance and making some decisions about how I want my website content to look in Google search results. So if I have the name of my website automatically being added to the end of a blog post, what do I want as the title separator? I like a pipe. Some people like dots or colons or M dashes or N dashes or regular dashes. You can kind of choose the style based on your brand voice. And then if you want to make changes to specific blog posts or pages, you can actually go in and edit those on page. I'll show you that in just a moment. If you're thinking about what you want your organization name to be, this is the part that would show up automatically as the default at the end of all your blog posts. So this is what mine is. Love It for Search, SEO Training and Services. There's the name of my organization. You can choose which content types you want to show in the search results. I always want Google as a default to check out my posts and my pages, but I don't specifically want them to look up my projects. So I set that up to no, because often I'm using projects as a way to show things within a portfolio. I don't need the portfolios to show up. I really just want the page that it's on to show up. So that's a decision that I have made that makes sense for my business. That may not be true for your business. If you are using categories and tags to organize your content, if you have a lot of different posts in different categories and you're actually going through and clicking those, you can choose whether or not you want Google to show your category pages. So I have a category called SEO tools. And if people are looking for SEO tools, they could find my category page that has links to all of my blog posts where I do reviews like this of SEO tools. So that's a space where I do want Google to see my categories, but I don't actually use tags that much. So I turned off the ability to see tags. So based on how you use your categories and tags, and note to self, I should create a blog post, or I should create a video all about categories and tags. So I'll link that when it's ready, but that's my decision here. If you use categories and tags, make sure they're turned on. If you don't, or if you use them sporadically, make sure to turn those off. Same with archives. I typically turn off my author archives because I'm the only person who's blogging on my website. So I don't necessarily need to have an author page for it because everything on my website is by me. But if I had different contributors who were submitting different content for my website, I would want to have an author page. So that way people who are looking for content by a specific writer would be able to find that page. So knowing what it is about your website that makes it special can help you set up your SEO settings here in Yoast, so that way it makes sense for your website. And then we're gonna get really meta here. Here's a blog post that I wrote back in 2018 all about how to use the Yoast SEO plugin, whether it's worth it, what are the drawbacks, what are the things you can do. So I'm gonna show you on the post about the plugin how you can update your plugins. It's like Thanos being like, I use the stones to destroy the stones. I'm using the Yoast post to explain the Yoast post. It's a little meta. So you'll notice that even though I'm an SEO specialist talking about SEO and using an SEO plugin, I'm still not getting a green light here. My SEO analysis is just orange. It's just okay. And you know what? That is okay, because it's okay to not have a green light if you've written something that's more interesting to read. That's the important part here, is to not just optimize your page, but also to make something that people actually want to read. Okay, so right now I'm in the general settings, but I'm going to come right up here to the little Y that has the lights next to it. And I'm going to click on that. And basically right now it has this red and orange that says, hey, you're not really doing that great of a job with this. And part of the reason for that is that I have put the wrong keyword in here for my focus keyword. I have written a bunch of different things here, and sometimes I get an orange if I do Yoast tactics or SEO with Yoast. But if I just delete that and just say my focus keyword is just Yoast, then I get moved up to a green light. Hooray! See, it wasn't that I changed anything about the blog post. Nothing that Google sees on this page has changed at all for me to go from the orange color up to the green color. I just changed what I told Yoast, and Yoast doesn't actually talk to Google. So this change that took me from orange to green doesn't matter at all. It doesn't change anything about this. It's just Yoast trying to put specific words into specific places. So when you're thinking about what you want to use for your focus keyword to be when you're filling this form out, try to make it the most simplified and short version of your idea that you can. And then you can build variations of that phrase around. So when the post was Yoast plugin or SEO tactics with Yoast, I wasn't getting the green light because it was just a little bit too specific. But when I chose the word Yoast, it says I just want to mention the word Yoast in a variety of places. And I can still talk about SEO tactics with Yoast and Yoast plugin. So I suddenly passed the test. And so if I want to continue following Yoast's rules, I can look at this and I can say, okay, great. It's telling me that the word Yoast is in my links. It's in my introduction. It shows up a certain percentage of the time. It's in my meta description. I haven't used it in any other blog post before. The text length is good. It's in the title. It's in the SEO title. It's in the slug. So it says everything about this is good, except my meta description is too short and I don't have any alt images in here. And so you can see, I have a bunch of different blog posts about all of these pieces and videos that you can watch specifically about how to write meta descriptions and how to make good image alt text. So I'll link those too. But if you wanted to go in, you could make these changes. You can just click here for Google Preview, and this will show up for you exactly what this will look like as a preview if you were looking for this on Google. And so the title of the post is Yoast SEO Plugin, how to optimize your site for search, and it tells me that my meta description is a little bit too short. So here's how to optimize your site to make it easier for Google to share your blog posts. that might be too long now. Yeah, so I just tried and I made it too long. And probably if I saved it like this, it would say, nope, Meg, now it's too long. Here's how to, maybe we'll remove use it. And now I think I'm getting close, right? So let me return to my post and update it, and that should do it. So you can see all the things that Yoast looks at. If you've watched my video about keyword placement, there's a lot of the same things right here in this list. It'll basically just go through a checklist and make sure that specific things are taken care of. Do I have outbound links? Do I have internal links that include my key phrase? Is it a short enough target keyword? Is it showing a certain number of times within the post? All of these are basically just a checklist that Yoast is going through and double checking and making sure that this particular word or phrase shows up in these 10 places and it hasn't been used before, and it shows up a certain number of times relative to the length of the post. It's really just doing some calculations here. So if you do want to add another couple phrases here, if you want to include related key phrases, you can upgrade to Yoast Premium. I don't think that's worth it. I'll explain why as I finish this walkthrough. The other thing that I wanted to show you here is the readability analysis. It will have things that will tell you whether or not it's easy for the people who are looking at your blog post to make it easy for them to read it. And there are definitely some grammatical things that you may want to consider here. You don't have enough transition words. Sometimes you repeat things in certain sentences. You might have passive voice. These are all things that make it a little bit more difficult for people to read your blog post. So you can make some of these changes if you'd like to. And then it also has some of these other pieces that make it easy for people to skim, making sure that your paragraphs are short, your sentences aren't too long. You have subheadings spread throughout. So you can kind of see that I have these subheadings spread throughout the entire blog post, and it's fairly easy to read. It just wants me to change up the order of my sentences and things like that. Honestly, I'm not too worried about readability. Sometimes when I'm talking about more complex topics, they're going to have some jargon in them, and it's not going to pass that, third grade reading test here. And it can be a little bit tough to get yourself to pass this test if you're talking about things that are a little bit more complex. So if you want to feel like you need to make things really readable, if you're talking to an audience that needs things to be broken down, maybe they're not native English language speakers, maybe they don't have a certain level of education, then you can definitely take some of these things into consideration, especially the reading ease test. But on the whole, sometimes they can also just be a little bit oversensitive. So if you have, green or orange here, that's great. You can see that even though I do this for a living, I still have times where I get reds because I like the parallelism of starting sentences the same way. That's part of my writing style. So if this works for you, great. If you want to make these changes, you can, but don't feel like you have to follow all of these rules because otherwise Google will penalize you. This is just recommendations. They are not hard and fast rules. You can still rank really well on Google if you don't get green lights on both of these. So don't let that worry you. And before I let you go, I have one question that comes up for me all the time, and I want to answer it really quickly here, especially because I'm frugal and don't want you to spend money on tools that you don't need. So often people ask me, Meg, should I upgrade to Yoast Premium? And the answer is no, probably not. You probably don't need it. And here's why. There are 4 things that are included in the Yoast Premium variation of the plugin. One is synonyms. So the way that I teach keyword research is that you should have multiple variations of different keywords that you include in various places. Yoast doesn't really like that structure because it's much harder to check for them and make sure that they're in all those places on your content. But if you take my permission that you don't need to be a green light, you don't need to feed different synonyms to Yoast to fit into your checklist. You can just write what you want to write with those keyword variations, and you don't need to tell Yoast what those synonyms are. Again, Yoast does not ever report back to Google and tell them what those keywords are. That's just for your use internally. So you don't need the related keywords or the synonyms function that comes with Yoast Premium. Number 2, it'll share, hey, here are some internal links that you may want to link to, but you don't really need that either. You probably know what you were talking about that you've previously talked about. And if you're just thinking about this as a way to think about your internal linking structure, I would rather you use a plugin like Link Whisper in that space instead of having Yoast try to do everything. So I'll include a link to that below if you're curious. I do think that plugin's worth it. Number 3, if you move your blog post or you change the slug, which is the part that comes after your domain where it's located, Yoast Premium will automatically set up that redirect. It will say, say, oh, the page used to be here and now it's here. But you can do that yourself with another plugin. There are plenty of plugins out there called 301 redirections or redirection or pretty links. Just go find a free redirection tool and you can do it yourself. And some of those will automatically do it for you without needing to pay like $100 a year. And 4, Yoast Premium also says, oh, well, we have word variations. So if you use the word lawyer and we see the word legal, we know that's about the same keyword. You don't need someone else's permission to do that. You know what you're trying to say here. You don't need someone else to do extra work to give you those green light validations. You're a good writer. Write the way that your people want to read, and that will help Google find you. So there you go. I just saved you $90. You're welcome. So there is my review of the Yoast SEO plugin. It is a very powerful tool that you can use to make sure that your keywords are in all the right places. And as long as you have a solid keyword research strategy in place when you're going into it, it can be very helpful to have those reminder tips. If you found this review helpful and you want to hear about other SEO tools that I recommend, make sure to like this video, subscribe, and I'll be back in the future with even more tips. See you then.